Next up is Steinar Løding's Jernalderdrøm. I read the first book, and I must say it blew my mind. He's a very strong prose writer, and it's just sort of genre defying, and it's I have to call it out for what it is. There is maximalism. There are copious amounts of footnotes, some of which are very funny, but I think the longest one I found was 5 pages of one continuous footnote. And he sort of piles text fragment upon text fragment. We start with these musings of Plato and Homer and Aeschylus, and it is all interesting. He's talking about, he's in Greece, this author insert, and he's thinking about how different the island must have been. He refers to a lot of literature, and that is something that he constantly does. There are tons of references to books on Mesopotamian and Milesian and all sorts of ancient texts. So you have this author who sits in a Greek tavern, a sort of cheesy touristy place that also has like a motel built in. So he rents this room, and the woman who runs the tavern, she has this implausible large library of all these ancient Greek texts and all of the sort of scholarship that's been done on it, and that we get a lot of in the references. And he is trying to write a text on Xenophon's March of the Thousand, and it in itself is a very, very interesting read. But then this fragments off, and you get to a new little adventure, and it's George Smith on his expedition to sort of unearth the Gilgamesh flood tablet, and you get this fictionalized Norwegian version of him, Old Young Song or something to that degree, that is doing, has this harrowing odyssey of his own, and digressions lead into other texts, and it's really, really quite something, and his prose style is also very, very good. He's Norwegian shares the quality with the German that it can make compound words to give sort of like a new spin and sort of breathlessness to certain sentences, and he does it in ways we don't typically do in Norwegian, because there is we don't compound quite as much as they do in the German language, but he put some pretty surprising words together, and it's sort of it's interesting. It thinks about how the the Western worldview will change with this flood tablet. What it will say about what the effects will be on Christianity, and it's I don't know. It's an intense and dense and very erudite and sort of highly intellectual, challenging text. It's I feel like it's very unique within Norwegian literature, and that's not to say that we don't have many great writers, which we do. But this is something that's particularly close to my heart. So my next book that I want to read in 2022 starts with the second book, and hopefully goes into the next book. 3 is in 2 parts, and the first part is in 2 books. So and he also has stated that this is never to be finished. New text fragments could always be added to it. Yeah, Meletus is the literary genres, the genre of the novel. Meletus is its literary birthplace, and that's like a lot of the argument in this book. Apparently, there he argues similarly to Stephen Moore that the history of the novel goes back as far as we have texts. Stephen Moore spends a lot of time starting with the Egyptians and the Mesopotamian and early Christian literature, and apparently that's like one of the threads through this is a similar mission of wanting to say something about the similarities and sort of the debt that the modern novel has filtered through the Greek texts into our current times. And it's very, and apparently it's very, this continues to be very sort of academic. The name Dionysus, researchers used to think came from the northern Balkans, from Thracia, and those that had wandered south influenced Greece in the 600 before Christ. Among others, Samson Itrim, assumed in the mystical religions in the antiquities, released in 1942. And so I also wrote this in my attempt at poetics, which is bullshit in an early state. But then I read in Brovig's From the Vegetation Cult to Classical Philosophy, Early Greek Religion from 1989, that for religious historians, the biggest surprise in the Linear B material was the god name Dionysus, found in clay tablets at the Mycenaean Linear B text, which it suggests that the English architect and genius Greek amateur Michael Ventris in 1952, which will hint that the Greek Dionysids must be developed from the Mycenaean Dionysier. And so there are lots of these digressions and like detailed points to be made. But there's also start to talk about Denmark. It starts to talk about the African slavery and Denmark and Norway's involvement in this. And this also puts some seeds into this last part of the series, which is sort of told simultaneously in the 1890s and in the 2000s. There are tracing like a family saga from all over the world. I think it's like, well, it's in Chicago. There's a fictional place in Norway that's based on Molde, apparently. London, Chicago, St. Croix. And this seems very different from what I've sampled. Still great prose, but until the end part, there really isn't this obsession with the ancient texts in the same way. It tells a family saga, but still breaking new literary ground with the genre, from what I've read from reviews and such. So I am very, very excited to read more Steinar Løding. Very sorry that most of you aren't likely to be able to read any of it. But yeah, I'm excited. Next is Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. I skipped this one. I have read parts of it, but I was just sort of killing time without any intention of dedicating time to reading the book. But yeah, I read Dubliners, I read the Ulysses, and I sort of just skipped Portrait. I haven't read Finnegan's Wake yet either. I read the first page, I don't know, 10, 20 times. I often pick it up and read it and think, this is nice, and then I put it back again. And I should probably just read it. I have a tendency to prepare for certain works. And it took me a while to read Ulysses, because at the time I had not read, when I first bought the book, I had not read Homer. I didn't have secondary reading material that I thought would be helpful. But yeah, it's something that should have been fixed long ago, but hopefully I will get to it soon. Next is The Man Who Was Thirsty by G.K. Chesterton, which is a book that I read many, many years ago. And I don't think that I was, I really quite enjoyed it. It was one of the first books that I had that was this sort of dreamy, strange book. I don't really remember much of it. I just remember that this was like back when I was reading Jane Austen and Wilde and George Eliot, Kipling, and that sort of slice of the classics. I also picked up this book, and yeah, I really liked it, and I think that it'll be interesting to see what I get out of it now, all these years later. But I would like to reread this in 2022. Of the 10 that I have picked out, second to last, she has reddish hair and her name is Sabina, by Julieta Campos. I adore Julieta Campos. The Fear of Losing Eurydice is one of my favorites of this year that I've read. This is like another book that I'm surprised I haven't picked up yet. Maybe I won't be able to save this for next year, actually. Yeah, it's beautifully described. Her name is Sabina, the novel, or the great poem in prose, if it is still possible to define the limits of genres, assumes the enigmatic form of the inscrutable hues of the seashell that contains the voices of the sea, preserves their intimate, unanimous murmuring, their serene condensation of the tempests. She's like another one of those writers that just has like great sensibilities, and I mean that in the sense that they care about but literature and history and aesthetics in a sense that appeals to me. I've often dreamed about the ocean. Yeah, this is going to be a treat. If any of you have read any Julieta Campos, then please tell me in the comments. And lastly, hidden behind my teacup, is Nicholas Mosley's Hopeful Monsters, which, from what I can understand, is probably his magnum opus. This is the fifth book in the Catastrophe Practice series, and the characters. I think that most of the characters show up in Catastrophe Practice as sort of actors in this sort of absurd play, and then one character, Judith, gets her own book. I think that they will show up in this book as well. So I need to read Serpent and Judith first, but I really look forward to finishing the major Mosley works next year. He truly is, when he wants to be, an amazing prose stylist. He can write the most beautiful sentences, all sweet, surprising turns of phrase that it's sort of lights up the page like little light bulbs. And as I've talked about before, the structure of the impossible object is such a delight. But I don't know where this one how this one will turn out. The series so far has been quite experimental. I mean, the Catastrophe Practice first book is not. I don't know. I think I would nearly recommend not reading it to people who aren't already in love with Mostly. Like, read Impossible Object, and if that is an appealing book, then maybe look into some other things. But I think that Catastrophe Practice is for a very particular reader, maybe one interested in the theater and Bertolt Brecht and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was challenging to really. It was interesting, but it's a stretch to say that it was very enjoyable. But the form changed drastically for the second book, and it seems like I'm not the only one who feels that way about Catastrophe Practice. And that is my 10 books that I want to read in 2022. I to hear your plans of what you want to accomplish, what you're reading in 2022. And I would like to hear if you have any thoughts and comments on the books that I've chosen for myself. Thanks for watching.